Welcome to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and struggles. I share what to eat, how to move, and what to think to get the energy and the vitality you want in this second and better half. And I'm your host, Deborah Atkinson. Before I dive into this topic, the difference between losing 5 pounds or even 10 and losing something more than that, like 50 in the title, but even 20 or 25, crosses a threshold, and there is a difference in what's successful. And remember this as you're listening, that everything that I reveal to you, is based on being a woman at midlife, whether that's perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. Flipping 50 does not mean 50, period. That's it. It could mean you're in your 40s and already approaching perimenopause. You're having a lot of hormone fluctuations even every month. And or it could mean you're 60 or 70. The rules changed. And the biggest rules change right around perimenopause when you go through those hormone changes. But once they do, things stay fairly similar. So pay attention to you, not necessarily your age or the number 50, thinking that means 50. What it means is everything after 50 to 100. Now there, the rules may change a little bit more. At the end, I'm going to share a little bit more about these two options. But one of the reasons I'm tackling this is because very recently I developed a new program called Fit You, really designed at looking at fat loss, weight loss, specifically for women who had more than 20 or 25 pounds to lose. So on that other side, things change. When you have that significant amount of weight to lose and you've been there for a little while, that's different, and the science proves it, than if you've got 5, you've got 10, maybe you've got even 15 pounds to lose, and it hasn't been there for that terribly long. You have just noticed things change, the rules change, and you're not able to keep up, maybe because of those changing, tweaking hormones. That's the 28-day Kickstart is one of the programs that I find most of my participants have the greatest amount of success in it, more so than the After 50 Fitness Formula for Women online course, because there's such an immediate stop and start. It's very finite in terms of here's your commitment, here's what we're going to do, learn this, do this with me, and there's live coaching. There's accountability for your new skills, your new habits. So what I want to do is give you an insight into why there's a difference in these two programs and which one may fit you if in fact you're shopping. And if you're not, you'll still get a little insight to carry away. Here's how I can be more successful depending on where I am. So here we go. The difference between losing 5 pounds and losing 50 after 50. The myths are that we grew up with in the first 3 decades of our adult life, and maybe 4 or 5 decades, depending on how old you are while you're here. The myth is that there's a calorie in, calorie out math problem that you have to solve. You have to eat less and exercise more. And I'm here to tell you that your calories do not control your weight. They do not control your fat, and they certainly don't control your mood, your energy. Your hormones always have called the shots. We just haven't noticed it because when we go through bigger hormone changes, there's more going on in our life and we are more susceptible to the negative effects of stress. The reason that all of these things are amplified, all the errors and mistakes of our ways, when we learned the best science that was available. When we were in our 20s or 30s, calories in and calories out, that was it. That's what we knew. In fact, it's what I taught. We were taught. I was taught as a student in exercise science before it was named even kinesiology, how to calculate somebody's caloric intake, their output, how much they were burning with exercise. We were able to look at just an estimate, a calculation, if you will, of their base metabolism, decide, okay, how much you needed just to sustain your weight, how much you needed to lose weight, and we treated it like a math problem. We know so much more. Fast forward, we've actually learned how to test your basal metabolism rate, your resting metabolism, your exercise metabolism, and that science can still lead us down the wrong path of calories in and calories out. There is something to be said for energy expenditure. There's no ignoring that science. However, if your hormones are out of whack, imbalanced, then your calorie in, calorie out math formula is not going to work. So truthfully, it's hormones like cortisol, insulin that have always been there, glucagon that's always been there, and growth hormone that have always been there that are changing as we age. And as we go through perimenopause and menopause, it's estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone that get our attention. However, the other ones are really causing the bigger problems. And if we can get those in balance, we do need to pay some attention to what's going on with estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, because they're factors in holding on to our lean muscle mass and losing our fat. But they're not as big a player as cortisol, insulin, and then the help that can happen with glucagon and growth hormone. Chasing the scale will result in a slowing of your metabolism if you're only paying attention to weight loss, and that is the goal with which you're measuring success. The chance that you will decrease your metabolism is far greater than your boosting metabolism. That will become impossible. So no matter what, think about this. If you have to move 250 pounds, whether that's your weight or that's a box that you're moving, it's going to take much more energy and effort to move 250 pounds than it would to move 150 pounds. So if you lost 100 pounds, your metabolism would slow. And that's simply math. That's truth. Now, there's no way around it. However, we can help you offset some of that by increasing your lean muscle mass, the percentage of your body weight that is muscle versus the percent of your body weight that is fat, and help you continue to maintain that weight loss by offsetting it. Hard exercise all the time is a myth. It's not necessarily what it takes to lose weight. And in some cases, if you're highly stressed, doing less exercise, even to the point where you feel you're really not doing any formal exercise at all, may actually increase the weight loss that you are able to successfully sustain. The reality is, because that hard exercise all the time will take you further out of balance, more cortisol, more stress in the body, are thinking that if a little is good, more is not better, right? What you need to remember is it's not better. A little is good, period. And then we need variety. We need other things in our life. So think back to if you have children or you've cared for small children, having them eat just one food when they go through that phase where all they want is, and oftentimes it's not something good for them, we know that's not ideal for their health and their growth. They're not getting the adequate nutrients that they need. If they stay with that one food, it's macaroni and cheese, it's all they're going to eat. They won't eat anything else. You're worried, right, that they're not getting vegetables and fruits and they're not getting adequate protein, and reasonably so. But the same is true of us. Why do we think that when we become bigger people, even though we're not growing, if we want to sustain our metabolism, we also need a variety in terms of nutrition, but also in exercise. We need fast, we need slow, we need heavy, we need light, we need a mixture. Not all of the same. Common questions that I get. I'm losing muscle. I feel like I'm losing muscle if I don't work out, but some days if I don't sleep, I'm just too tired. So this was a comment literally that I had in my inbox yesterday, as of course I'm recording this podcast. So let me read that to you again. I feel like I'm losing muscle if I don't work out, but on some days, if I don't sleep, I'm just too tired to work out. So this comes from a woman who obviously has been reading and is educated about the fact that, yes, it takes strength training in order to maintain lean muscle mass, because we are losing it faster than we are, one, maintaining it, or certainly than we're gaining it as we age. We started losing it at age 30, and that was an easier thing for the body to do than to gain it. And as we get older, that's even more true. However, what's happening is we can't, in this statement, we can't and don't want to exercise every single day. Twice a week doing heavy strength training, 1 to 2 days a week of interval training, high intensity, 1 to 2 days of doing longer, slower work. Those are all good. So there is room for rest. There is room for days off, completely an active life, but not quote unquote exercise. But coming to the end of the sentence is the key. If I don't sleep and I'm too tired to exercise, she's still feeling guilty about not exercising. But the biggest needle mover for this particular person who wrote into me is getting sleep. So it's true. If you exercise regularly and optimally, frequency, okay, with optimal frequency, it was poor grammar, I apologize, and you're eating adequate calories with adequate protein, you will still not be at your optimal body fat percent, holding on to lean muscle, if you're not sleeping. So it's not the exercise that comes first, it's the sleep. Now, that said, you can exercise in a way that will help you sleep, but you need first to nail sleep. And really, for most of my customers who come, if sleep is good, they're already in a good spot, great. Then we can dive into what's the next best needle mover. Is it nutrition or is it exercise for you? And we can get that, because usually if you're sleeping well, your stress is not as high, right? You're more resilient. There may be stress. If you have a meaningful life, people you love in it, they are making a total mess out of your life. So learn to embrace that, not hope that it goes away, because chances are you're going to be dead, all right? So it's learning to deal with, yep, there's going to be stress. Things are going to go wrong. And yet, if you've been through a tragedy, you know this feeling. Is anybody bleeding? Is anybody dying? Then it's not a tragedy. And if it's, an older person dying, if they're not suffering, but the end is near, it's sad. Sad because you loved them. But it's not the same kind of stress, as other things might be in life that are truly tragic. So learning to look at that and take your sleep so seriously, because if that's not there, the other things that you are doing right won't have the glue to stick to make you successful. So that's a common question. I'm going to jump to another one. I'm barely eating and I still can't lose weight. Now, this came in a quite long email from someone who was a brand new subscriber and reached out and said, I'm wondering if you can help me. Here's my status. Here's how old I am. This is the activity I'm doing. This is how I eat. Blah, 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 blah. I'm barely eating and I still can't lose weight. And that is the one singular sentence that I pulled out, highlighted, and I said, this is your problem. You've got to come back to, again, the fact that you're following the myth, calories in and calories out. Thinking and believing that if you drop your calories down and you increase your activity level, you will lose weight because you've created a calorie deficit. When in fact, what you're doing is, by eating less, you are telling your body to burn less. You are imposing a slow metabolism on yourself. And by trying to exercise more, you're trying to do the opposite. You were trying to speed up your metabolism, causing a lot of stress for your body. First of all, your body is most comfortable at rest, right? So, even the right dose of exercise is a little stress on your body, but the kind that we're imposing with a calculated way. Short, high intensity exercise, you do it and you recover. That's the way we're meant to deal with stress. In our world of chronic stressors, constantly you're thinking about work, finances, your kids, we're worried about so much more, and we're so totally connected. Your phone is probably right now arm distance away, right? And when was the last time that you checked it? And don't you have this compulsive, I got to put my hand on it? Right now, without holding it, unless you are holding it to listen on your phone, you know what it feels like in your hand, right? I mean, we are that familiar with that little electronic piece. And if we are about to leave the house and we can't find the phone, how panicked are you? Just an illustration of chronic stress, right? We're so totally connected, so totally reliant on things other than just our thoughts, just being present without worrying what the rest of the world might be doing or what image someone else is posting on their Instagram page, right? So, an example of the stress we're under. Back to this comment, I'm barely eating and I still can't lose weight. You're causing a slowed metabolism. So if you're eating 800 or 900 calories a day, shared with me in the same email, you're absolutely not going to lose weight. You're slowing your metabolism. Or, I will tell you this, it can work temporarily. You may lose weight, but what you're losing is a large percent of muscle. And that is the metabolically active tissue in your body. If you lose muscle, your metabolism will plummet. So you may temporarily lose weight, but long term, next month and the month after, you cannot go back to eating anything normal and hope to lose weight. But look at 800 to 900 calories a day. You can't go lower than that and sustain any energy, any mood, any cognitive thought processes for any length of time. So it's impossible to back yourself into that corner and expect you'll ever come out of it winning. So try not to get there in the first place. Let me point out the similarities between losing 5 pounds and losing 50. With weight loss, with any weight loss, healthy weight loss or not so healthy. So the example I just gave of really cutting calories, no matter what it was, if that's broccoli and kale and salmon and quote unquote, she says, I'm eating healthy, that's not enough. It doesn't matter if what you're putting in is enough. If you can't cover all the bases for the protein you need, the carbs you need, the fat you need, the micronutrients you need on a daily basis to sustain that healthy machine that you're living in. With weight loss of any kind comes some percent of muscle loss. So our goal with weight loss is to minimize it to somewhere between 10 and 15%, which is about as low as you can go. And that doesn't matter if you're 20 or you're 30 or you're 50 or you're 60 or 70. However, later, the older you are, the easier it will be to lose a percent of that muscle, because remember that you started losing it at the age of 30. And so your body will lose it much easier than it will gain it. And as your hormones decline with aging, even if you prevent some of those slowing of hormone changes because you are exercising and eating correctly, have great lifestyle habits, a larger percent for you at an older age than at a younger age of muscle loss will occur with weight loss. It's a given. So how do we maintain it? Instead of you losing up to 50% of weight that is muscle mass and only the other 50% being fat loss, that slows your metabolism. If you're losing just 10 to 15%, you would need to and most likely be eating adequate calories, eating adequate protein within those calories, reducing toxins, things that will prevent you from having the most energy and vitality, you'd be getting enough sleep, you would be doing strength training more regularly, and more importantly, putting that as a high priority above cardiovascular exercise, because there can be muscle wasting with cardiovascular exercise because you're doing it over and over and over again, and you need that weight training to fatigue in order to keep it. Another similarity: include protein evenly spread throughout the day, starting at breakfast. Now, I'm going to address fasting or intermittent fasting with you in a bit, but right now, no matter what, with intermittent fasting, you're not ignoring breakfast. And really, with intermittent fasting, you're not changing your caloric intake. You're just shortening the window that you take in those calories. And what we find again is that a lot of women in particular are trying to do both. When you get to a point where you're desperate, you're trying to shorten the window that you eat and decrease the calories in the food that you take in. Again, you may boost a certain hormone through the fasting, and that's the science behind it. But if you've caused yourself to decrease your metabolism in the process, add more cortisol and stress in the process, you may totally counterbalance all of those positive results. So whether you have 5 pounds or 10 or 50 to lose or more, including protein evenly spread throughout the day starting at breakfast is important. And what that means is it's not just a count of grams of protein. It's certainly not a percentage of your diet of protein, which is not user-friendly for any of us. How many of you pull out a calculator at every meal and say, okay, did I get my percent here of 30% of my meal of protein, for instance? But grams, being able to count grams is super simple. So we know if you right now look at your palm and you look at the palm of your hand and you fold in at that first knuckle, that kind of deck of cards size, depending on if you have a small or a larger hand, that deck of cards is about 4 ounces, and between 4 and 6 ounces of a chicken breast or thigh, salmon, cod, fish of any kind, pork, beef, bison, elk, you name it, that's about 25 to 30 grams of protein. So looking at, are you getting that kind of protein at your breakfast and at your lunch and at your dinner is important. You can't do the traditional American way of, maybe 10 to 20 grams of protein, maybe at breakfast, because our breakfast foods are so traditionally laden with carbohydrates, which makes you tired. You can't think. Students who go to school on breakfast cereals and milk with very little protein don't do as well as students who go to school that have had, maybe eggs and bacon, even sausage, healthy kinds of options. But looking for those high protein things, we all function and focus better. We're able to concentrate and be more productive when we do that. So it's not just energy, but it's your brain and ability to do better there. Important that you have that at breakfast and you have it at lunch and at dinner, as opposed to very little at breakfast, a little bit more at lunch, and then a lot at dinner. Your body can process a certain amount of amino acids at one time, and the optimal sweet spot is about 25 to 30 grams of protein. They've opened that window up to 20 to 30 because very active people, this is non-intuitive, so listen closely, very active people can get by with less protein because we synthesize it better from the food we eat. Our bodies get better at using protein, probably knowing we need it. Very sedentary people need to increase their protein. So if you think about your aging parents, as I do mine, who, have this mentality, well, I don't need very much because I'm not very active and I have a small appetite. And those things are true. However, they need more protein at that point because they're not stimulating muscle with exercise. Their bodies don't have good protein synthesis. So in order to absorb protein for the use of their muscles and to sustain it in strength, They need more than you or I might if we're very active. Hard message to get through, but keep trying, okay? So teaching and learning takes time, and if they've had a habit for 8 decades, you've got to work on that for a little bit longer than just a singular conversation. So including protein throughout the day allows your body to work with optimal amino acids, and it's about 14, which is half of whatever. So if you take 20 grams of protein in a meal, you get about 10 amino acids. The sweet spot is about 14. So more isn't better. You'll just wash that away, flush it down the toilet, or store it as fat. Less is just not enough. So if you're a real small meal person, somewhere you bought into the theory, which is incorrect, that 5 or 6 meals a day is the better way to go, you're not probably getting enough protein at any of those 5 meals in order to sustain it unless you're consciously trying. So if you're getting a breakfast between 20 and 30 grams, you're getting lunch between 20 and 30 grams of protein, you're having an afternoon snack and an evening meal, so 4 times, you're probably doing even better. And I would say, looking at your lean muscle tissue, it's probably better if you need that energy. Another similarity between, low fat loss or weight loss needs and higher, even with a low calorie diet, your protein kept at higher amounts. So that higher, probably toward 30 grams, can sustain muscle and spare muscle losses. So I would hesitate, however, to go back to my writer yesterday who said I'm barely eating, 800 calories a day. Even that is too low. Even if it were very high in protein, it still is not going to cover the bases very easily for losing fat, holding on to muscle. So let's talk a little bit more reasonable, at least 1,500 calories, 2,000 calories. You can eat more if you eat better. Think about that. You can eat more if you eat better. Take care of quality. Quantity will take care of itself. And you're getting better micronutrients, better macronutrients, and that's where we talk about protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Carbs aren't the evil, by the way. Just the right kind at the right time is important. Another similarity, when you lose weight, your total weight, your metabolism will slow. Back to that example I just want to remind you of, moving 250 pounds versus 100 pounds, that's just, makes sense, right? The amount of energy to move you when you're bigger versus when you're smaller, your metabolism will slow somewhat based on that. Your overall health is going to improve. We just have to be sure we offset that. And we have to pay much more attention if you've got 50 to 100, even 25 pounds to lose versus 5 or 10. Keeping more muscle and using food type and timing can reduce your metabolism drop that comes with weight loss. After weight loss, there is not an off-ramp, whether that's 5 or 10 pounds or whether that's 50 pounds. What I notice and hear is that people will, I'm going to ramp it up because I'm getting close to my goal, so I'm going to fast or I'm going to do more exercise. I want to get close to that goal, thinking then you can let your foot off the gas pedal. It's absolutely backward. We know this, and science has not changed on this, and nor will it. Whatever you're doing to lose the weight, you will have to continue doing more of once you do lose it, because you again have lost weight that makes more energy required to move you and just sustain you even at a resting rate. You have to do more to maintain weight loss, not less. And so that means continuing to eat really well, not cutting your calories, which will slow your metabolism further, continuing to exercise and be an active person, continuing to pay attention to stress and sleep. You'll have to do more, not less. Crucial that you get this while you're going through weight loss. You're never going to be thinking, I'm going to go back to eating this way, if you're not adapting a lifestyle change that you're willing to do forever. We've got to keep looking at ways not to increase your exercise time, but continue to work with exercise intensity in a way that won't injure you, continuing to work with metabolism boosting ways of eating, foods that you can eat that do have an impact, and looking at the whole picture. Another similarity is doing extra during a short period of time, expecting to do less when you reach your goal is counter to reality. And I just dwelled on that a little bit more, but I want to drive this one home. You'll have to do more to sustain that new weight if it's lower. Now, on the other hand, if your weight stays very similar or the same and you have that low amount to lose, and you're really focused on body composition, decreasing in fat, increasing lean muscle mass, the scale may not change. We don't care what the scale says so much as we care what your body composition is doing. You will still be smaller, you'll be more toned, you will have more energy, more endurance, more stamina, and you will age better, backward potentially. Let me talk about the differences now between losing smaller amounts of weight and fat and larger. Number one is lower fat diets to begin the weight loss cycle are more helpful if you are significantly overweight or classified as obese, still higher in fat than you're likely used to eating. So take that into account. Lower fat diets used to be, keep your saturated fats below 10 grams of fat per day, keep your fat overall below 20 or even less than that. That's probably been replaced by new science that actually suggests getting healthy fats in your diet and doing it on purpose, not just letting them happen accidentally, but literally reaching for avocados and salmon and coconut oil. Those types of foods included in every single meal is important, but if you have more weight to lose, there is still evidence and research showing that a lower fat diet compared to someone who has 5 pounds or 10 pounds to lose, someone just with that level who doesn't have much to lose and who may have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart risk, will be healthier with high quality, healthy fats in their diet. So if you're dropping really low on fat and you have just a little to lose, chances are you may find that you can move the needle easier, including more fat in your diet. We have to lose the idea that eating fat makes you fat. In fact, it doesn't. Eating more fat may make you more lean. So the starting point is what's key, and there will be an evolution. So as you begin to lose more weight, including more fat in your diet, will help you sustain that weight loss and continue down the path. Number two is higher fat diets for those with less to lose, so the opposite, right? Number three, frequency of your high intensity exercise is slightly lower when your fitness is higher. So if you have less to lose, you've already been exercising, and you have a certain level of kind of fitness level that's maybe moderate or even more advanced, less high intensity exercise is better. The frequency of exercise is slightly higher if your fitness level is lower. That's not intuitive either. Here's why. Because as you're a beginner, your intensity level and what you can sustain, the length of your interval training sessions should be really short. The high intensity is relative to you. It will feel hard. But getting that fit and that hit of exercise in short doses is actually helping with fat burning. When your fitness level increases and you're able to sustain a little bit longer either interval, more intervals per session, or a longer overall session, you need less of it in order not to risk injury and to actually let yourself push super hard during the exercise and recover in between. So what often is skipped is the recovery. And with people who are just really tied to it, and maybe the word is strong, but addicted to the feeling, the endorphins, the feel good that happens with exercise that maybe they don't experience other places in their life because of stress. They may over exercise and push themselves into a place where injuries occur frequently, that they get injuries they sustain and become chronic, that start to limit what else they can do. And I see this very frequently with people who are more lean, really don't have that much to lose, but maybe are really getting specific about wanting to lose belly fat. Or, we are so critical of what we see in the mirror as opposed to what others see. And it will always be that way. But be careful and back off. So more frequency at first with either strength training or with high intensity interval training when you have a lot to lose, and then less as you dial up the intensity and your fitness level increases. You need more time for recovery. That's counterintuitive, but very, very true. Next, there will be more day-to-day fluctuation when you have more weight to lose. You've got more water weight. You have more tissue to react negatively to trigger foods that you're sensitive to. Sleep fluctuation increase your changes daily, and everything is amplified if you have more weight there. So you're going to change. I would say get on the scale weekly, not daily, if you have 50 pounds to lose, because you could sway between 3 and 5 pounds even day to day. But if you take a Monday at 8 a.m., for instance, is your day to weigh, then Monday to Monday, you're going to see some more consistent change. Now, it may not be as fast as you want it to, and this tends to be why we get on the scale more frequently, but you will frustrate yourself for no necessary reason. Depression, anxiety, or mood influence ability to stick with it more and more if you have more weight to lose. There's the isolation. You may be intimidated by going out, trying to do it alone. You don't have a real plan. You're using kind of a random plan, falling back on things that used to work that probably won't work again. You're being a plan that's not achievable, sets you up for failure. All those things contribute to more frustration, depression, anxiety, mood that influence you when you've got more weight to lose or you're in that classification of obesity. So choosing foods first, getting the sleep down that help you decrease the effects of mood swings and the chemistry really that's happening because of food you're eating or the way you're exercising or the lack of sleep. You can make some real inroads there. Next up, fiber needs to increase significantly when you have more weight to lose. And your fiber need increases, but not as much if you have less weight to lose. Next up, more food addictions and attachments exist, including sugar-free foods, fat-free foods, baked, empty calorie processed foods in overweight and more obese classifications. And so if that's you, you kind of default to, I like this, I'm going to swap that out, but you come back to, when you're doing that, calorie in, calorie out. And if you will remember, it's hormones that control. What you also need to remember is any foreign substance in your body, like an artificial sweetener, can confuse your body. When your body's confused, your metabolism will slow, the exact opposite of your intention. So you've got to find ways to substitute and change your taste buds, change your desire, and instead of trying to fix the symptom, eating sweets, trying to change that by eating artificially sweetened foods, figure out the root cause of the problem. Why do you have a craving for sweets? And it may be physiological. You're missing micronutrients or macronutrients, or it may be psychological. You're using a lot of willpower throughout your day. So there is no longer this isolation where we can talk about your body weight, or your mind and the stress you have on thoughts about what you're doing in your life, or your soul, really the emotional pieces of who you are. We can't separate mind, body, and soul anymore, and we know it. We have so much scientific evidence to show what you think affects you. In its very simplistic form, think about When you don't want to do something, how you get a knot in the gut of your stomach or the pit of your stomach, or when you get tense in your neck, in your upper back, shoulders, when things are going wrong, when you tend to have more injuries when you're under stress. So all of those things really we've known for a long, long time. But coming back to, where that is related to weight loss, and cravings, really looking at first changing the physiological things. That's the easiest step. Making changes in the psychological part really forces you to look at your stuff. Your stuff comes up when you start making other changes. Looking at more all or nothing mentality still exists more for those who have more weight to lose or who are obese. Going out to eat, as an example, a lot of times I hear from clients, I don't want to have to be good. I don't want to have to be thinking about it. That is kind of an example of you haven't really turned the corner on it yet. You still feel like you're on something, that it isn't just natural for you to reach for the things that serve you better. You still feel like you're depriving yourself, like you're on this weight loss journey that isn't about you eating well. It isn't about you exercising because you love it. It's about losing weight. And when you can flip that switch and realize, if I never lose another pound, I actually love the way I feel. I actually like the foods I'm eating. I like, having energy. One of my greatest client quotes, I like feeling good. When she had resisted making some changes I wanted her to make for so long, but we take it step by step. You have to be ready. And once you get there, feeling like this is nature, and no matter what, when I go to a restaurant, I'm still going to try to eat and use the menu as a suggestion, not as mandatory. I have to order something off of this menu, but ask for what you want. Ask about the food and the food quality. It may mean you start to change what restaurants you go to because it's easier to eat well at certain restaurants than others. But the whole point is not that you're being good or depriving yourself, and not that there's a bad, quote unquote. There tends to be, when you have more weight to lose, more following food blogs, sharing of recipes, collecting recipes that focus on low calorie, low fat, but still include triggers. You haven't really changed your mentality about, if you focus on food, you focus on this or that, you're going to get more of that. So if you're sharing recipes constantly and thinking about weight loss, you're kind of going back and forth in a virtual binge purge, right? So maybe you're not buying it and eating the bags of Oreos or making that healthy or unhealthy dessert, but you're constantly thinking about it. And when you cross the threshold, you stop thinking about it. You start eating because you're hungry. You stop eating because you're full. You choose healthier sources simply because it makes you feel good, not because it's an obsession, but because it's a gift you give yourself. Last but not least, and there are more, this is probably not an all-inclusive list, but there are definitely usually more artificial sweeteners, more grazing and snacking, more salad meals, or tons of fruit going in if you have much more weight to lose and you're obese. And the artificial sweeteners I've addressed. It being a foreign substance, a chemical going into your body, your metabolism will slow if you're doing that. More grazing and snacking is really not giving your body a chance to stop, digest, adjust, and really free to think about, am I hungry or am I just craving something psychological? Salads are not necessarily the way to go. So you may be skimping on fats and or protein if you're always going with a salad. You may be looking at this as salad as a diet food, and certainly, there is room for meat and potatoes. People, there are room for all kinds of foods in a healthful diet, not the 4-letter kind of diet. Tons of fruit, you have to watch out for. If you're filling yourself up with a lot of high sugar foods, whether it comes from natural sources or not, there's a big impact on your body that can boost your insulin, which is one of those hormones that controls fat storage and makes you better at it. Let me talk about fasting here just for a second. So when is it appropriate? So you're only going to sustain long-term results from fasting if, number one, you're not overstressed to begin with, because fasting is going to be stressful on your body, and two, you have good habits established to return to. So if you're on a train, most people will tell you this, absolutely, that if they've gone on a fast and they've lost weight, when they go off the fast, they regain some of the weight. Now, the risk and the challenge is this. When you go on a fast, you're losing muscle and fat. When you go off the fast, you're gaining fat. You're not gaining muscle back. So it's very clear that if you stay on that roller coaster, you are simply repeating the diet mentality that we've had for years, when we've gone on diets, off diets, on diets, off diets. And over time, that may be why we got to the point we have more fat to lose now. So first, I would say, if you're going to look at fasting and intermittent fasting, and there is a body of science to show, yes, it works. There's less body of science done on perimenopausal women or menopausal women who are in greater stress, significant stress, than on other people. So studies done on men, studies done on younger men, do they apply to us? I would have to say no. So if we can find a body where a lot of subjects, a large pool of subjects was perimenopausal, menopausal women, and looked at what happened, how they won or lost weight, that would be substantial. There's not a lot of research out there at this instance right now. So what are good habits? And that's the first place. If you don't know what good habits are, you're going to return to the same thing that got you here thinking, should I fast in the first place? So good habits are strength training in a way that boosts your lean muscle mass. So with this length of podcast, I don't want to go into this directly right now and spend a lot of time, but you've got to reach fatigue twice a week minimum. Next up, another good habit, having recovery strategies that include adequate calories and protein, the right rest. Ultimately, the ultimate rest is sleep for your needs. You've got to know what that is. And an awareness of your gut health. So if you're eating more healthfully and you know what that is now, you're absorbing the nutrients that you are eating that help you recover instead of missing them, that will increase potentially muscle wasting or the slowing of your metabolism. Let's just go into a description of fasting. It's a continuum. There are a lot of ways that you can try it. Step one for fasting, for me and all the clients that I work with, is overnight minimum of 12 hours. You finish eating at 6 p.m. at dinner. There is no good evening snack, period. No one should be snacking before they go to bed. 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, you finish that last meal, the kitchen is closed, and you fast a minimum of 12 hours before you have breakfast the next morning. That should be everyone, all the time, every day. Step two, if you want to take that to a next level, increase that fast, that overnight fast, to potentially 14 and maybe to 18 hours. So that might mean for somebody dinner at 6 p.m., nothing until lunch, depending on who you are. Now, if you spend a lot of calories because you're exercising significantly, I would say no. You need to back down on the exercise and make sure you're not overstressing your body when you're underfeeding your body. And step three, I want to go back because I'm afraid I didn't mention this, overnight minimum of 12-hour fast, but also nothing between meals. That's something a lot of people are not doing, but that's the bare minimum. Give your body a fast between meals as well. That's when your body digests food instead of constantly getting something in. Now, step three, fasting, is you shorten your window of eating to about 8 hours during the day. Now, it would be 6, right? If you fasted from 6 p.m. until noon the next day, then you only really have noon to 6. If you're going to continue to fast, you've got 6 hours, but really it's about not decreasing your caloric intake. And a lot of people get this wrong. They try to do both. They try to reduce their caloric intake and say, okay, I'm only going to get 2 meals in today, so that'll be good. But you, again, are going to slow your metabolism if you take in less fuel. So even though you may be boosting the hormone glucagon, which is important for fat burning, if you're decreasing your metabolism at the same time, that could backfire. Balance each other out, maybe, is how you want to look at it. The last step, the fourth step in fasting, would be do a full day of fasting. Adding, though, protein-rich bone broth, so you're sipping on something that's going to give you some calories, some protein, even smoothies and or more liquid soups, but that are high in protein. So you're not negating your protein need while you're fasting. So is that total fasting like water and juice? No, and I wouldn't recommend juice except vegetables, but even that is more sugar content going rapidly into your system, spiking blood sugar, spiking insulin, which then stops your fat metabolism and stores it. So to break a fast, this is the next important thing. Whatever it is, do it so it's easier on your system. You start this way with increasing smoothies, liquid meals, easier to digest, increasing your soups, starting with clear before you go to something that's creamy. Even if you're not doing dairy, but you're doing coconut cream, heavier fatty types of things come a little bit later. So gradually introducing them. It's kind of like coming off of the flu. You would be smart about what you're going to put into yourself if you just had a stomach upset. Exercise, short duration, high intensity, 1 to 3 times a week. Long duration exercise, 1 to 2 times a week. That can be the same and similar for both 5 pounds or 50 pounds, but the dose of each, how long it is going to change. Daily, it comes down to looking at, do you have relaxation in your day? Do you have good sleep hygiene? Meaning the bedtime, the wake routine are set to make optimal weight loss easier. You've got joy and happiness in your life because we know you have stress. That's a given, right? You've got a heartbeat. But do you have joy and happiness? Something you look forward to every day. Water adequately. A body without water is not going to lose weight because it's stressed. Adequate protein. I think I've covered that one several times. And then adequate micronutrients. If you decrease your calories too much, there's just absolutely no way you can get micronutrients in. And most of us need supplements. Almost all of us need a supplement in order to cover our micronutrient basis so your body, your machine works well. Weight loss and fat loss at 50, no matter what, 5 pounds or 50, is not the same as when you were 30. And certainly looking back for those of us who are baby boomers or just gently coming behind a baby boomer, it's not the same as when we were 30, the practices we did then, but it's not the same for us now as a 30-year-old now either. The things you've got to factor in are your mindset, your eating, your exercise, your rest and recovery, the sleep you're getting, the stress you're under, and the hormones that are impacted by all of those and the signs and symptoms those hormones are giving you right now. That's the whole picture. It's not a matter of looking at just your exercise, just your nutrition, and ignoring the other stressors in your life and the busy, crazy travel schedule or the busy, crazy work life you have. It all plays in to your ability to lose weight. And it doesn't mean if you're busy and stressed at work that you can't lose weight. It just means that has to be a part of what you put together in those puzzle pieces as you bring together your best plan. Your program may look different than your best friend's, even if you have exactly the same amount of weight to lose, if you have very different schedules in your day. So back to your options. If you're ready to take a step and you're looking for what is the next step, you have 2 options. And if you have 50 or more pounds to lose, certainly the Flipping 50 Fit You program is much more designated for you along the way. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried in the past. Those have all been learning experiences. You've collected data and information about what didn't work. If you lost weight and then regained it, you have evidence about what did not work, not about what did. I hear frequently, but it only works, I can only lose weight if I count calories. And women who are telling me that have weight to lose and they're trying to go on another program. So if you get to the point where you have to lose again and again and again, counting calories actually did not work for you. The second program is the 28-day Kickstart. So I'm going to give you pages to go and look. Flipping50.com, it's all spelled out. These links will also be in the show notes. Flipping50.com /fit-u, just the letter U, for the first one. That's an 8-week program with live coaching. Or the 28-day Kickstart is flipping50.com /28-day-kickstart. And if you just type in 28-day Kickstart, it will come up in your search, I'm sure. That's a 4-week program, also live coaching for 4 weeks, but really dedicated and meant for people who have a little less to lose, but are really struggling with those hormone changes that have suddenly changed the rules for them. If you have a question based on any of the content today, or comment, leave it below the show link at flipping50.com. I love hearing from you. Conversation is the best way to start changing our thoughts about this and raising the glass ceiling. If this episode was helpful, please leave me a rating in iTunes, and you'll find it under Flipping 50 Podcast, and then share this with a friend. Surround yourself with a supportive community of women who are on the same journey. To get the most from this week's episode, check out today's show notes at flipping50.com /podcast, where you will find the juicy free downloads and the resources and links mentioned on the show. Let's start flipping 50 together.